Welcome to the SilverSky podcast, our very first edition. And there wouldn't be a more appropriate first guest than one of my favorite people, Clark Easterling. What we're trying to do with these podcasts is to give SilverSky employees, SilverSky customers, and SilverSky partners just a deeper look into the people, the human side that makes SilverSky who we are. So I'll be with you most of the time. My name is Bruce Wirt. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at SilverSky. I have the pleasure of being the face to the market, for better or for worse. My mom thinks it's okay, but you have your own judgment, so make that. And I'm really excited to have Clark Easterling as the very first person because Clark's been with the company so long, and he's such a big part of what we do, both in front and especially behind the scenes. I think there's so much that we get done here at SilverSky that goes through Clark, and people just don't understand, Clark, the headaches that you deal with on a daily basis, just trying to make things right.
Like Bruce said, I've been here for almost 20 years now. And, I have gone from VP of marketing, VP of product marketing, VP of contracts and pricing, back to VP of marketing, over to VP of sales operations. So I've bounced around a lot, and I have enjoyed my time here.
What's your favorite thing that you've done as part of the organization?
Well, I think the VP of sales operation and being transformational in the way we have used the CRM to help improve the process on the sales front end, as well as the back end, and hopefully in the future for the actual billing services as well, to make it easier on sales, but most importantly, to make it easier on the customers.
Yeah. No, and you're fantastic. And one of my favorite lines is, if there's a way to do it, Clark will figure it out. And I think that sometimes people can be scared to ask questions, especially hard ones, things that I don't know if I want to try to get this thing through. I don't know if it'll work, and I don't want to get yelled at. And most of the time, Clark, you find a way. And I think out of all the people that I've ever worked with, and I've only been here for 8 months, but I've never seen somebody that can not just find a way, but find a way within the framework of the system so that it can scale. And we all know that scale is one of the most important things that we can do in business.
Yeah, I think early on in my career, we did a study one time, and we were having churn after the fact. Let's say your customer signed up for a 24-month contract and they left after month 24. And so we went back and looked. And the one thing that stood out was that if you had a challenge during deployment, that customer was 75% likely to churn. So when I look at everything that comes into the system, I think about what that a customer experience is going to be during the process. And I want to make sure it's a good one and that everybody's informed of what they need to do in advance. So number one, it doesn't clog up the system. And number two, it doesn't give the customer a bad experience.
Now, Clark, let's go all the way back. So you've been here for 20 years, but take me back farther than that. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Hartsville, South Carolina, a little small rural community. We had a paper mill like every small town in the South, as well as a nuclear power plant.
How far is that from my little town of Murrells Inlet?
It's about an hour and a half.
Okay,
So,
but
yeah.
west, north, south?
So it would be northwest of you.
Okay, so right on the North Carolina border.
Yeah, not very far from the North Carolina border, correct.
Did you make many trips to Myrtle Beach as a young Clarkster?
So my grandparents had a beach house in Garden City, and it was 70 miles. My street was right off of the bypass, and there was a sign about 10 miles down the road, and it said Myrtle Beach, 70 miles. So took a lot of trips down to Myrtle Beach / Garden City when I was a kid. I would go with my grandmother several times during the summer, and then I would go with my parents at least one time during the summer.
And you're going to tell me the story about when you went hunting with Jerry. I want to hear that. I'm going to save that for a bit, and I don't want any trouble like that on our trip.
Won't be any trouble. On another episode, I'll tell you my funny story about going shrimping and getting lost.
So little Clark, growing up in South Carolina, what did you want to do? I mean, is this what you envisioned, being right here, right now, in this wonderful place with a wonderful leader? Is this what you wanted to do, or was it different?
It was interesting when I was growing up. I was the first person in my family to actually graduate from college. And my dad was a maintenance worker. And so I wanted to kind of be an engineer because I wanted to work with my hands. Lo and behold, I didn't realize that a lot of engineers don't work with their hands. So I went to Georgia Tech, became a nuclear engineer
Wow.
based on that power plant that was built in my hometown.
Yeah.
I wanted to know how it worked. So I worked in the nuclear industry for about 6 years. I actually told an interview when I was at Georgia Tech interviewing for a job with Babcock and Wilcox, and he asked me, "What do you see yourself doing at 55?" And I said, "I see myself being retired on a 35-foot blackfin fishing boat." Well, lo and behold, I'm now 58. I'm not on a blackfin fishing boat, and my career completely changed after I went to grad school. I always wanted a business degree. Unfortunately, at Georgia Tech, you can't get a business degree and an engineering degree at the same time. And so I went back to grad school at North Carolina and then kind of pivoted into product marketing, product management, product development. One of the reasons being I could sit on the side of the engineers and not necessarily understand everything, but being able to talk the talk and walk the walk with them. So it made the transition easy for me. And then I've always been a big numbers guy as well.
So when I think of nuclear power plants and nuclear engineering, I think of two people, Clark, Homer Simpson and Mr. Burns. Is that what it's like?
There's a lot of characters in the nuclear industry. I was exposed to a lot of them, people that grew up in the nuclear Navy with Rickover, and then people that kind of followed suit from that. But it's always been a cast of characters. There was one guy who was also a professional wrestler on the side, but he was too big and clumsy because he kept hurting people. But then he went from there and started competing in the Highland Games, tossing telephone poles and throwing hay bales. So it was an interesting thing because he would charge people $10 to watch him bend a crescent wrench.
Wow. Now, I want to go back to pro wrestling for a minute because obviously it's a big part. For those that don't know, I spent some time in radio in Philadelphia, and I had a wrestling show that did very well. I used to travel with a lot of the old timers, a lot of the what do they call them? Legends, right? We don't
Yep.
say old timers, we say legends, and I hosted conventions and all that stuff. So big part of my life. I was a wrestling fan as a kid, not so much now. I'd watch it casually, but were you a wrestling fan growing up?
I was a huge wrestling fan growing up. I watched Jim Crockett Promotions and
Yeah.
Georgia Championship Wrestling. In 1977, it was during the week. My dad was a maintenance guy. He got off at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So he picked me up and we drove to Charlotte, North Carolina to Ovens Auditorium. And I remember the wrestlers that day. It was a young Ric Flair,
Yeah.
Blackjack Mulligan, Dusty Rhodes, who's my all-time favorite, and Paul Jones, and I guess the Mass Destroyer and a few other people. And I was just hooked. So, lo and behold, when I went to Georgia Tech, obviously TBS had Saturday morning wrestling. And I might have told you this story before, Bruce, but our fraternity house was right behind the parking lot of TBS. So I look out there in the parking lot and there's a bunch of guys drinking beer and bigger guys. And I was like, those guys look familiar. So I climbed over the fence and walked over there. And it was Tommy Wildfire Rich and Dusty Rose and a few other guys. They had just got finished taping wrestling. I had a great conversation with those guys. I mean, it was just, Dusty was just a character by himself.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I got to meet Dusty one time before he passed away. That was great. That's awesome. And I think that's the thing I love about wrestling is so many people have childhood memories. I remember being in business and I was in telecom back in those days and I drove up in Michigan and I got to see the Pontiac Silverdome, the shell of the Pontiac Silverdome. And
Yep.
I remember that's when Hulk Hogan body slammed Andre the Giant in 1987
Yep.
in that very area. So really cool. Before I ask you about your journey into cybersecurity and how you ended up in SilverSky from a nuclear engineer, I do want to ask you something I learned today off camera here is that are you a ski instructor or were you a ski instructor? What's going on there?
Yeah, I used to be a ski instructor up at Beach Mountain, and it was a very interesting time and all. So we would have a group of 5 or 10 people. You had about, let's say, 50 minutes to teach somebody how to, go down a hill and not kill themselves, so to speak. But the main thing was to make sure people understood how to start and stop and how to control your movements.
Hard
And
for some of us.
yeah, but I mean, I think the most rewarding thing I did was I taught an 80-year-old grandmother how to ski one day. She was in my class, and I've never seen a lady so happy going down the bunny slope the entire day. And she just wanted to do it. And then I've had other people just terrified of falling. And I tried to explain to them that everybody falls. You're not necessarily going to get hurt. You may get bruised up a little bit, but if you can't control your fear of falling, then you probably don't want to be skiing.
Do you have a family, Clark? Are you there by yourself?
Yeah, I've got a beautiful wife, and we got 4 kids. My oldest son just got married a month ago. So, and all of my kids are college graduates. 2 of them have master's degrees.
Nice.
They're off the payroll, as I like to say, which is a great thing, and they're all thriving in their careers.
So he runs a good ship in the office and at home.
Let me state that my wife runs a good ship at home. Okay, the only thing I do is pay.
That's important.
She does everything else. She's a fantastic person.
That is important. Paying the bills is a very important part of our lives, and you must learn because you apply those lessons as you come in. And you're a great leader here at SilverSky. And I want to ask you about that journey. So you started out in nuclear engineering. Somehow you were teaching skiing along the way, but you ended up in this wonderful world of technology that we're both in and have been in for many years. So talk to me about that journey. How did you get to SilverSky? What came before that? And tell me that story.
Yeah. So I started out after I got my MBA and started out working for basically an internet provider.
Okay.
And basically Morrisville, North Carolina.
T1s, dial-up, DSL, what?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
We had a dial-up practice, as well as we were providing networks to people, T1s and everything. And then a few years later, we were interviewing a company to sell our internet practice to out of Greenville, South Carolina, and they ended up offering me a job in the telecom space. It was called New South. Eventually went to Nuvox and then got acquired by Windstream or Paytech and then Windstream. And so we started selling T1s, and then this was in the late 90s, and we started selling, can't remember, it was the devices before the Fortinet devices. And we started selling, basically say, you want internet, but do you want secure internet?
I see, yes.
And so people they would fall all over it. And that first partner kind of fell apart on us. So I met this gentleman named Richard DeBrow, who had this company down in Fort Lauderdale called Guard Networks. And Richard said, well, we can sell you the Fortinet devices, the same thing you were been doing, and we'll sell it to you at a lower price and a better service. So I started working with Richard probably in 2000, and we had pretty good business growing with them because, again, when you try to sell somebody an internet service and you want to say, do you want a secure internet or do you want a not secure internet? Everybody wanted secure internet because it wasn't that much more expensive.
Right.
And then in 2006, we had a layoff, and I had everybody on my team was an A player, and I just couldn't justify cutting 2 A players on the team. And so I asked them if, it came down to just a business decision of money that they wanted to get rid of. So I asked them to cut me, and I didn't have a job. And Richard called me up and said, hey, would you be interested in interviewing with us? And I told Richard, I said, listen, I told these people I didn't have a job. I wasn't interviewing with anybody. I said, once my term ends, I'm going down to New Orleans and help with Katrina relief for 2 weeks. And once I get back, I'm happy to interview. So I interviewed on July 5th, 2006, and I got the job that day. So I've been with SilverSky ever since.
So wait a minute. When people are mad at Clark about something, maybe he said no or he couldn't do it, I just want you to remember, he has a family. very successful, a nice family. Second thing is he sacrificed himself for two people on his team. The third thing is he went down and helped in the heart of the storm with Katrina relief. And if those things don't matter to you, then maybe you don't have a heart. Because I mean, I didn't know that about you, Clark. I have a lot of respect for you being able to sacrifice yourself for the people on your team. I think that's something that a lot of leaders wouldn't do, and it's something that I think speaks to the heart of what a true leader is. It's being out there for your people.
I
Yeah,
definitely
that's
try
all.
to do that.
Tell me about what is it that you do today that you think creates the most impact for our customers and our partners? It's a tough question, but if you had to pick one or two things that you do today that has the most impact, what would it be?
I think just taking let's say a 26-year-old company, technically we started in 1997, we were incorporated in 2000. So you pick the number you want to use for the company, is consolidating everything from a startup into, a mature company, and then taking those processes and improving upon them. So again, it's all about the experience. If you have a good experience going somewhere, whether it's eating out, going on a vacation, staying somewhere, you're likely to go back if you had a great experience.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
a lot of things we did back in the day were just spreadsheet oriented, bootstraps, not a lot of process and procedure per se behind it. And so since I've been in sales operations, I've improved the contracting process to make it so much easier for customers to sign. I mean, we used to give pages and pages of documents for customers to sign. Again, that's frustrating to the customer. It's frustrating to the sales rep. And they
Yeah.
want to try to read and negotiate everything. And so we've slimmed that down. We've made the pricing much easier. We've controlled the process of creating SKUs and products so that when we sell something, the deployment team knows about it, the billing team knows about it, the support team knows about it, so that if a customer calls in with an issue, they can identify the service, support the issue, and most importantly, give a good experience to the customer.
Yeah, and I want people to understand that there's so many people in this company that all the number one thing that they care about is a positive experience for the customer.
Yep.
And they'd sacrifice their own work, meaning they'll do more work to make sure that there's a great experience on the other side for the customer. And and that's what we exist for. And I think it's very rare in this industry. There's a lot of specialized companies, but this organization that does so many things. I mean, we're an MSSP, we have an MSP arm, we do MDR, we do professional services, and we do it all at scale. And when you think about this crazy world of compliance and security, it's really hard to make sure you're buttoned down in all of those areas. And I think we got a ton of great people that lock those things down for our customers and for our partners. But your job is to make sure it's glued all together and that it can scale, because I mean, business is meant to either grow. If you're not growing, you're dying, right? So your job is really hard. You're not just doing that for one product or one functional area. You're really doing it for four.
The other part I like is I do like the customer interaction, especially when we're negotiating with a contract. So I'm not hiding behind the scenes all the time. I'm actually negotiating with the customers on the terms and conditions. And I understand that our terms and conditions are probably built for 90% of the market. And there's 10% out there that wants some tweaks. Yeah. And so we try to give them those tweaks and make them happy. And again, sometimes it's all about the relationships, to getting on the phone with somebody and realizing you really want to get the business done. You're not trying to be a gatekeeper. You're trying to make sure that both sides of the house are taken care of, because again, we don't want it to be all one-sided. It should be a shared relationship, and it should be a partnership between us and the customers.
Partnership, and we're regulated too, so that has to be part of the equation, right? As we close today, what's one life lesson that you learned the hard way? I've been married 3 times, so I learned that the hard way 2 times. But what's a life lesson that you learned the hard way?
I really didn't realize that how you grew up influenced how you react with people. And that was the one hard lesson that I learned. My parents are very passionate. I'm a very passionate person. in my household, even though I'm an only child, in order to be heard in my household, you had to raise your voice because my mother and father were talking and they like to talk. And I don't normally talk as much as I am now because I'm a better listener than a talker, but you'd have to raise your voice to be heard. And then, so as I got into my career, if I was speaking with somebody and I wanted to be heard, I raised my voice and people are saying, well, you're yelling. And I was like, no, I'm not yelling. This is the way I grew up. And so finally, I had a relationship, first marriage, and I'm a
Oh,
three-timer as
nice.
well. And she
I knew
said,
I
why
liked
are you
you.
always yelling? She goes, why are you always yelling? And I was like, I'm not yelling. So we went to the marriage counselor and the guy goes, yes, you are yelling. And so, I literally had to learn to tone down my voice because it was the way I raised. And he basically said, the way you grew up in your household is the way you're going to relate to other people. And if that's the wrong tendencies to have, you have to be able to change. And so I'm very cognizant now if we're in a discussion and people get emotional, because they're very passionate about it, I will actually just not say anything because I'm concerned that I'm going to raise my voice. And so it's not that I won't get my thoughts across if something needs to be said, but I'm very careful that I'm not raising my voice. And I always joke at my wife now. She says something to me, and she basically says something across the room. I said, "Are you yelling at me again?"
Oh, boy.
So, but I mean, it was a hard thing to learn because I wanted to get my point across. I wanted to be heard. I didn't feel like I was being heard unless I raised my voice.
I just want to, before we close, I'm going to ask you to do it. Give me it in 3 minutes or less. Tell me, Jerry Piakowicz is our most tenured sales engineer, and he's a hunter like you are. So you go out on a hunting trip together. Give me the story. Jerry ends up in a very bad way. It's not funny. It wasn't funny when it happened, but we can look back with a little chuckle now. I think we can.
Yeah, so Jerry's a hunter. I took him hunting every time he's ever been. He's gone hunting with me, and we occasionally drive across fields when we're hunting, and we happen to be driving across a very large 1,000-acre field. And if anybody are familiar with very large fields, there are cuts in the fields to help with drainage. And I knew where 4 of the cuts were. Unfortunately, there was a 5th cut in the field that I was not aware of. And then these are not small ditches. These are, basically 10-foot ditches. And so we were going across the field. Fortunately, we were going very slow, about 15, 20 miles an hour. And the truck I'm in, the airbags no longer work because it's such an old truck. And so we were easing across the field. And in my mind, Jerry probably thought we were streaming across the field. And unfortunately, we did not see the ditch until we ran into it.
Boy.
And it was about a 15-degree angle going into the ditch, and it hit on Jerry's side, and neither of us had our seatbelts on. Fortunately for me, I was protected because of the steering wheel, but Jerry bounced all around the truck, ended up breaking my windshield with his head. So once we got out of the ditch, I actually made it to the other side and then rolled back in because of kind of panicked there, and was pulled out of the ditch. Immediately took Jerry to the hospital because I was afraid he had a concussion from hitting his head on the windshield. And we were at the emergency room, and we were there about 15 minutes. And Jerry called me on the phone and said, I broke my neck. I was like, you got to be kidding me. He goes, no. So I ended up taking Jerry to the doctor. That was on a Saturday. Tried to get Jerry a doctor's appointment on Monday with the orthopedic neck person, but wasn't able to do it until Tuesday. Took Jerry to the office, and it was not as bad as it sounds like a broken neck. It's a cracked neck, very common injury for people and all. And unfortunately, Jerry had to wear a neck brace for about 8 weeks and then strengthening his neck up after that. But we're all safe, and Jerry's been hunting with me since then, and nobody was harmed.
Okay. Well, is Jerry able to laugh about it now?
He is able to laugh about it now.
All right.
So it was not funny when it happened. Everybody's laughed at me. But the funnier thing is that a gentleman that had been hunting in that property for 60 years ran into the same ditch last year.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So I hit the ditch going from right to left, and he hit it going from left to right. So we've determined that nobody can jump that
Nobody can
ditch.
jump the ditch.
He totaled his truck. Mine's still running. The power of a Toyota.
You know a lot more now, hopefully, about Clark Easterling, the man behind all of the things that he does here at SilverSky. I hope this was enlightening for everybody that's watching today or listening, however you choose to do it. Make sure that you subscribe to SilverSky on your favorite podcast platform, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Do it. Just put it on as you're driving to work, or if you're doing your leisure time. Learn a little bit more about our people, eventually our customers and our partners. And I don't want to end here today. And I said this already. SilverSky's rare company that at scale, we do MDR, we do MSSP, MSP, and professional services. Right now, for free on the website, silversky.com, you can do your free cyber maturity assessment. So you can take an assessment and see how mature your cyber practice is at your business. And of course, we can help you out with any gaps that you have. So that's it for today. My name's Bruce Wirt, Chief Revenue Officer here at SilverSky. This has been Clark Easterling, our VP of Sales Operations. And we'll talk to you next time on SilverSky, the human side.